Hello guys, welcome back to this new TechNet video. We're doing another InDesign basics tutorial, and today I'm going to be walking you guys through the toolbar. It's a very short and quick explanation of what each tool does. Hopefully you'll get some good knowledge out of it and explore InDesign on your own, and I hope you enjoy, guys. The selection tool allows you to grab things and move them around on your page. It also allows you to resize boxes by dragging the anchor points around the edge of your frame. If you have an image, for example, you're also able to use the selection tool to drag this in a circle, which moves the image around inside without shifting the frame with which it is sitting in. If you were to hold Ctrl and Shift whilst dragging one of the anchor points, you'll also be able to resize the frame proportionally alongside the image within it as well. Without holding the Ctrl and Shift, you can see that the frame moves, but the image doesn't. Be aware of this when you're moving your own content around the page, because sometimes it can cut off portions of your image. The direct selection tool allows you to move the anchor points of a box so that they move freely without affecting the other anchor points' positions. For example, I can alter this rectangular box with an image into a different shape by purely moving a single point. The page tool allows you to select individual and multiple pages at once by holding Shift. This also allows you to rearrange pages and move them around the document. You're also able to change its orientation and size of a page without affecting any of the other pages. The gap tool allows you to adjust the spacing between objects such as images and frames. As you can see, this tool also allows objects to interact with each other. For example, as one frame gets larger, the other frame shrinks. This tool is useful for quickly moving objects around a page and changing the size of objects whilst keeping their distance from one another the same. Content Collector Tool. The Content Collector tool allows you to grab exact copies of content from a page so that they can be stored and used later in the document. Really, all this tool does is allow you to copy and paste large amounts of content in a more efficient and speedy manner. Much like the previous tool, the Content Placer tool now allows you to do the opposite. Now that you've collected your content using the previous tool, you can use the Content Placer tool to add the images that you've just collected to other pages of the document. The Text tool allows you to draw out boxes to add text in. The Line tool allows you to draw out perfectly straight lines across a page. The Pen tool allows you to draw individual anchor points so you can create custom shapes. The Add Anchor Point tool allows you to add new anchor points to pre-existing shapes or frames. For example, you can take a square and add more anchor points so that you can move them freely and also create new custom shapes using the Add Anchor Point tool. The Delete Anchor Point tool is pretty self-explanatory. It does the opposite of the Add Anchor Point tool. So if you have too many new points on a frame or shape, for example, you can use this tool to remove them and make it more simplified. The Convert Direction Point tool allows you to take straight point vectors, or the corners of a frame for example, and turn them into curved points. The Pencil tool is really useful for drawing abstract lines. For example, if you need a certain type of effect, if you need to create a wave, for example, you can use the Pencil tool to do a freehand version. The Smooth tool allows you to draw lines that, using the Adobe software, will create a much smoother effect than the Pencil tool will. If you look at the Pencil tool, sometimes your lines can be a bit jagged and rough, whereas the Smooth tool will smooth out those lines and make it look a lot cleaner. The Erase tool, pretty self-explanatory, will erase portions of your lines. For example, if you need a certain portion of your frame to be gone, you can use the Erase tool to remove that as you desire. Frame tools are very similar to shape tools, but instead they draw out empty boxes that you can then add content to later. So you can add a rectangle, a different shaped polygon such as a triangle, or even an ellipse or like a circle, and add images or text to those boxes later. The different shape tools have obviously a variety of different options. You have the rectangle, the ellipse, and the polygon. The polygon is essentially any other shape that's not a square or an ellipse. It allows you to make triangles and stars, for example, but basically you can draw out these boxes and fill them with color or add a stroke to them, which is essentially like an outline. The scissor tool is a way of cutting through images and text box, for example. If you draw different points on the frame, it will cut a direct straight line through it, so you can separate content. For example, if you want to create the effect of a slash through an image, you can use the scissor tool to cut them into two different shapes. The free transform tool basically combines the selection tool along with the rotate tool. It basically allows you to do anything such as rotate images, rotate text box, and also move them around on the page and resize them. The rotate tool is also pretty simple as well. It allows you to rotate text boxes, shapes and images, for example, so that if you want to put them on a slight angle, you can rotate them, and it will also tell you the degree in which you're turning it. The scale tool allows you to scale images and text boxes up and down, so if you want to shrink a certain box, you can do that, as well as increase the size of it as well. The SHEAR tool is quite an unusual tool, and it has very specific requirements and uses. If you have a long rectangle, for example, and you want to slightly shift it over so that it appears it's almost falling and at an angle, you can use the SHEAR tool to move the endpoints so that they tilt either left or right, and you can also increase and decrease the size of the SHEAR as well. The gradient swatch tool allows you to add gradients to objects, so if you want a dark side that flows nicely into a light side, you can use the gradient swatch tool to add that to any shape or text box that you'd like. The gradient feather tool is very similar to the gradient swatch tool, except this time you have a transparent or a feathered edge to it and a coloured edge at the other end. So if you want to create a nice like faded effect or with a bit of colour in, you can use the gradient feather tool to do that. So the notes tool is very specific for if you have large documents with lots of content and editing that needs to be done. You can select certain portions of text and add annotations to the note box, which will appear as a pop-out menu on the screen. You can make any sort of little tweaks and adjustments later on, but the notes is basically allowing you to track changes that need to be made or things that need to be done later on. The colour theme tool is actually a really neat way of gathering different colours to use elsewhere in your document. For example, if we select this image here using the colour theme tool, Indesign cleverly detects different colours within this image and creates a nice swatch for you. From here you're able to alter these colours in different ways, such as making them brighter or darker, and even being able to use the colours elsewhere to fill in shapes, for example. If you like this swatch, then you can also save it using this button so you can come back to it later. The eyedropper tool is very similar to the colour theme tool, except this will only take one colour from an image, for example, that you can then quickly move over to another text box or object, for example. The hand tool allows you to freely look around your document, so if you hold spacebar you're also able to use the hand tool, but the hand tool allows you to look around a page without having to use the scroll wheel or any of the sliders on the right and bottom of the screen. The magnifying tool is quite self-explanatory. It allows you to zoom in and out of the page. If you want to zoom in to look at a lot of detail, use the magnifying tool to actually close in on whatever you're looking at. And if you want to see your whole page, for example, you can use the zoom out, which will allow you to see the whole thing in its entirety. Thank you so much for watching, guys. I hope you enjoyed the Indesign Basics tutorial on how to use the toolbar. Like I've said before, look through each of these tools, get to grips with them. Some of them are not as important as others, and you won't actually ever use them, but just have an explore, get to grips with things, and hopefully you do some banging work. Alright, see you guys.